Hey everybody, it's Dave from Nerdbox, and on today's episode of the Popcorn Theory, we're going to be diving into some new territory. We're going to take a look at this Saw franchise, and one character in particular. We're going to take a look at Adam Stanheight, who is one of the central characters from the first film. You know, the guy that was trapped in that notorious bathroom with Dr. Lawrence Gordon. And while Adam's fate seemed to be pretty much straightforward, he was left to die after failing to escape. There have been subtle hints and some connections that could suggest that he actually was more deeply involved in John Kramer's world than previously thought, and that maybe, just maybe, he's still alive in the Saw universe. In our theory today, we explore if Adam Stanheight was secretly a member of Jigsaw's cult. Let's dive into that theory. At the age of 5, Adam met and befriended a young boy named Scott Tibbs. However, their friendship took a dark turn when on Adam's 6th birthday, Scott stabbed him with a rusty nail. Now, while Scott claimed he was toughening Adam up, the incident marked the end of their close friendship. Now, despite this, they seemingly maintained some contact and reconnected later in life. As an adult, Adam became a freelance photographer. He took on various jobs, including working for private investigators and suspicious spouses, to secretly photograph subjects. His apartment, as seen in the first Saw film, suggests that he wasn't particularly successful financially. In late October 2004, Adam is hired to follow and photograph Dr. Lawrence Gordon. This seemingly simple job lands him in the clutches of Jigsaw. He becomes a pawn in Jigsaw's twisted game, forced to confront his own flaws and fight for survival. And it's here that his relationship forms with Dr. Gordon, something that could potentially play out further along in the franchise. Every disciple of Jigsaw ultimately served a purpose to John Kramer. Logan Nelson. Medical expertise. As a former Army medic and medical resident, Logan possessed crucial medical knowledge. He likely helped John Kramer design traps and tested the human body without always being fatal, at least in the initial design. He may have also provided medical care to John as his cancer progressed. Then there's the funding part. As we eventually learn, Logan's involvement in a dark web fan site selling blueprints could have been a means to fund their operations, showcasing his resourcefulness and dedication to the cause. Amanda Young, her psychological insight as a former addict and victim herself, Amanda had a unique understanding of the human psyche and the desperation that could drive people to extreme measures. This insight likely helped John tailor his traps to exploit the specific weaknesses of his victims. She also served as John's enforcer. Let's face it, Amanda wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, ensuring that the games proceeded as planned and dealing with any unforeseen circumstances. Detective Mark Hoffman, law enforcement insider.
There is a better, more efficient way. What do you see?
Look!
What do you see?
Tell me what you want!
I want to know if you have what it takes to survive.
Hoffman's position within the police force provided invaluable intel. He could manipulate evidence, steer investigations away from John, and even use his authority to abduct victims. Finally, there's Dr. Lawrence Gordon. Like Logan, Gordon's medical expertise was essential for designing traps that tested the limits of human endurance without always being instantly fatal. He could also provide post-game care to survivors, ensuring they lived to contemplate their lessons in that game. And then he became a symbol of survival. Gordon's own experience as a survivor gave him credibility in the eyes of other victims. He embodied the possibility of overcoming seemingly impossible odds, reinforcing the idea that the games were about survival and redemption. Now, while at the end of the original Saw, Adam was left locked in the bathroom, presumably left to die, but as we learn, this would be out of character for John Kramer, who often showed mercy on his test subjects, having spared the lives of several of his test subjects that we learn throughout the franchise. Adam's background as a photographer would have made him a valuable asset for Jigsaw, providing surveillance, documentation, and other recon skills. His work aligns with Jigsaw's need to track and document potential victims, and his role could have been of an intelligence agent, providing logistical support and handling operations that didn't require direct violence or exposure. This would explain why his presence in the franchise is not overt, but it would also make sense that the cult's ability to set up complex traps with little interference. In Saw 2, we saw Detective Eric Matthews discover that one of the victims from Jigsaw's trap, Michael Marks, was found with evidence pointing back to him. Photos of his interactions and misconduct were left as clues to bait Eric into the trap. Jigsaw uses this leverage to lure the detective into playing a game that tests his patience and ability to listen.
What do you want with me?
A little of your time, detective.
I don't have any time.
You asked me what I wanted and I told you. Believe me when I tell you your son is in a lot of trouble.
Saw 3. Photos were used in a more indirect way. Amanda Young set up traps and left behind clues and visual evidence for victims. Photographs and surveillance were involved in how the game's players were selected and manipulated. In Saw 4, photos play a role in setting up Detective Riggs' test. He finds pictures that guide him to locations and potential victims he needs to save, or understand in order to complete his test. These images are part of the psychological challenge, baiting him to confront his obsession with saving others.
Hello, Officer Rick. In order for you to fully understand my way, you must feel what I feel. The photo before you is of a man in desperate need of help. In the next room are the tools to his salvation. His life is in your hands, but in the end, only he can save himself. Make your choice.
Saw 6. Photographs are part of the materials used to expose the unethical behavior of the health insurance executives, particularly William Easton, who is the central subject of Jigsaw's test in the film. We also see Hoffman with a series of photos of his targets that have been entered into the latest games. And finally, another set of photos are used to set in motion Jigsaw's other apprentices in targeting Hoffman. In Saw 3, Amanda is shown suffocating Adam with shrink wrap for about 36 seconds. Now, according to forensic analysis of injury and death by asphyxiation, like we did with this Stu survived scream theory, we're going to dive into the details on how Adam would have survived this. Now, it typically takes between 30 seconds to 3 minutes for the oxygen deprivation to cause unconsciousness, and then eventually leading to death. At 1 minute, brain cells begin to die. 3 minutes, neurons suffer more extensive damage and lasting brain damage becomes more likely. And then at the 5-minute mark, death becomes imminent. If air is restored before that threshold of 5 minutes, which it was, recovery is possible. And honestly, Adam's weakened state and him panicking and struggling could have affected how long he would have survived when he was being choked out. But it's more likely that he was just rendered unconscious. Also note that he previously endured a similar duration without air when he was submerged in the bathtub at the start of the film. In Saw 7, we learn of Dr. Gordon's role. While not directly using photos to bait victims, John Kramer revealed in a video will reading that he would no longer keep any secrets from him and refers Gordon back to the bathroom to set up Hoffman's trap. This confessional could be where John reveals Adam's involvement, and Adam could have been one of the cloaked disciples with Dr. Gordon when he captures Hoffman. In Saw 3, Amanda attempts to kill Lynn and argued with John over it. It's here where a key clue is dropped by John. He tells Amanda that he had cleaned up mistakes, emphasizing the plural, mistakes.
I'm a murderer. He took my life from me. So I just returned the fucking favor.
No, Amanda, that's what you thought. But I know different. You left him for dead, didn't you? But I cleaned up your mistakes, and I forgave you for them.
While we know he was referring to her failed attempt to kill Eric Matthews, and at that time, Eric is the only mistake that we're explicitly aware of that could have been rectified. That use of the plural suggests that there was more than one mistake that was corrected, and if John was aware of Amanda's intentions to kill Adam, he could have sent another one of his disciples to rescue Adam and nurse him back to health. Amanda's actions and her obsession with John would explain why he kept many of his disciples secret from each other, out of fear that there would be infighting, which becomes apparent after his death as we see the war that happens between the cult to keep Hoffman in line. Also in the franchise, we really have to focus on one thing. The franchise spends a lot of time weaving together all the details between all of the films, and there's one glaring mistake or intentional clue that supports this theory. The shackle on Adam's corpse is on the right foot, but every time we see Adam alive in the bathroom, the shackle is on the left foot. The placement of the shackle is even emphasized in Saw 3 during a flashback scene of John instructing Amanda to set up the bathroom trap, and specifically shows her putting on the shackle on his left leg. As we saw in Saw 2, John Kramer is not opposed to putting one of his disciples into the game, so Adam being in the bathroom in Saw 1 could have been a setup just to test Dr. Gordon. Each disciple in Jigsaw's cult serves a purpose, whether it's from medical attention, whether it's from inside knowledge of how the police works, or, in Adam's case, taking photos and conducting surveillance of the victims that would be put in Jigsaw's games. As previously mentioned, Jigsaw uses surveillance in order to set up his victims, and as we've learned with the other disciples, none of them had that talent, and John would have been too sick to take those photos, so he would have to rely on somebody like Adam to do that for him. Adam's relationship that grew within the bathroom with Dr. Gordon could have meant that he was one of those masked disciples that helped capture Detective Hoffman. And finally, Adam was being suffocated for 36 seconds. Not even long enough for him to really be rendered unconscious. So to sit there and think that that is something that may have killed him would be inaccurate. So that is our theory, and as always, I will leave it to you to decide whether you think that Adam is still alive in the Saw franchise. Now, is that something that if we saw in a future movie, Adam returned, would you be excited about that? Let me know by dropping that in the comments. But honestly, when we're thinking about it, I think Adam was a part of it the whole time, and I think he's still out there alive, and I think maybe he is working with Dr. Gordon in this. It certainly does add an intriguing twist to the entire franchise and explains his fate and connecting all of the loose threads throughout the entire franchise when it comes to the photos that are being used. Now, before we go, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't been subscribed already. I'm not going to be like those other people out there and say, hey, go hit that notification bell, because we will be in your subscription feed and you can watch us at any time. But that like and subscribe goes a long way. Now, if you have any ideas for a future fan theory that's out there about a movie, let me know by dropping that in the comments as well, or shoot over to Facebook and shoot me a message through Nerdbox there. Anyway, until the next, see you.